Hey everybody, welcome to Spire.
Tyrese, I lost your audio there, so I don't know if you're muted or what. Did we lose
My
you?
apologies.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah, my apologies, man. The somehow, some way the countdown was still playing. But with that being said, hey everybody, welcome to Spire Podcast, where we aspire to inspire you. I'm your host, Tyrese B, and we got a very special guest for you guys today. Our special guest for you guys today is a mentor, motivational speaker, I guess you could say a public speaker. He has his own book. He's an author, and he's also the CEO of the Good Teammate Factory. Welcome to the show, Coach Lance Loya. How you doing, man?
Tyrese, I'm excited to be here and talk about good teammates. So thank you for having me, including me in your wonderful project.
Man, awesome to have you on, man. Love your background, love the posters in the back, man. I believe those are books, man. Let's get it going, man. Let's talk about some basketball.
All right, so those are my books. I'm, author of 8 books. And it's like surreal for me to say that because I never, I had no ambitions of being an author, never, intended for things to play out that way. But I'm very proud of all 8 of those books. And each of them, they were their own journey in their own way.
We'll definitely get to your books, definitely as we go along this podcast. But with that being said, let's start from the beginning, man. Where are you from originally?
Well, I live in Southwest Orlando. I live very near Walt Disney World. In fact, they just started up the Magic Kingdom fireworks. It's a nightly adventure. People go to Disneyland, they get to see the fireworks. I can see those fireworks right out my office window here every night. So we're glad to have those back after the pandemic's coming to an end. But originally, I'm from Western Pennsylvania, about 2 hours outside of Pittsburgh. So you probably hear some Pittsburghese in my accent. I can't quite shake it.
No, definitely, man. Definitely. Both great places to live, both great places to grow up at. Let me ask you, since you're from both of those places, are you a fan of any teams in those areas, or who are you a fan of basketball?
Well, when you're born in Western Pennsylvania, most hospitals put you in some kind of white or light blue or pink, blanket when they bring you out into the room. But when you're in Western Pennsylvania, they bring you out in black and gold. You're draped in black and gold. So you're a diehard Steelers fan and Pirates fan, and Pens fan. So it kind of comes with the territory. So yes, I grew up a Pittsburgh Steelers fan.
No, those are solid teams to grow up as. Steelers are definitely won, a couple of Super Bowls. I think the last Super Bowl they won was a couple of years ago against the Cardinals. So definitely a good franchise to definitely be a fan of for sure. What about, your start in basketball? When did you finally start, playing on the court, actual,
sports are very big in where I grew up. I grew up in a very rural community. In fact, you say this now and I look like, I live in a very suburban area now, but when I was a kid, I grew up, my house, there was not another house within a mile radius of my house. And you go like 12 miles in one direction before you ever saw another human being. It was a very rural community. So your connection to the outside world was a lot of times your school. And at school, you participated in sports. That's how you made your friendships. And, when I grew up, I loved sports. My father was big into sports. And so it was big in our household. So I played a lot of sports when I was a kid. And when did it start? I don't remember sports not being there. So I think I was I don't know what the expression is, as a ball in the crib baby type of, childhood I had.
No, definitely. I can definitely, relate to that. I grew up in a household where we do nothing but sports. My mom's a fan of tennis. My pops played football. So, definitely love sports since I was a kid and definitely love it now. So, let's talk about, go ahead.
I was just going to say, times have changed a little bit in some degrees, and you become much more specialized in sports at a much younger age. I'm not always sure that's such a good thing for the individual or for, the sports industry as a whole. But when I grew up, it was very seasonal. You played, you did football in the fall, basketball in the winter, and baseball in the spring. And, I graduated high school. I lettered in 5 different varsity sports. So, I loved all those sports and, So, I have an appreciation for a lot of different sports and what it takes to be successful in each of those. And they're all different.
Definitely. I mean, especially now. You have a point. Especially looking at the sports landscape today, it's just sports 24/7. I mean, it seems like it never stops at all. But
Yeah.
to me, I think that's a good thing. For especially during the COVID times. You haven't been able to watch sports as much as you want to. You're just trying to decompress from the whole pandemic. So, I mean, I guess you could say for me, I think that's a good thing now. But maybe down the road, you probably might not be so.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I think the pandemic, when sports all came to a halt, like when they canceled the March Madness tournament and the NBA went into hiatus and baseball season everything's put on hold. I really, you gained an appreciation. You take it for granted how much sports are a part of your life, and they're always there. You can turn a channel on anytime and find some kind of sporting event. And when that all went on hold, and you got the opportunity, they started showing reruns of old games and, from different generations. It was great. And that's when the whole Michael Jordan, Chicago Bulls, the Netflix series came out. I guess it wasn't on Netflix. The whole thing, I can't think of the name of it here.
The Last Dance.
The Last Dance came out on HBO. So, you loved it because it reminded you how much of your childhood was just interlaced with sports and how fun that was.
Definitely, man. Especially when that came out last year around, I think in April, which was like peak time for COVID. It definitely saved a lot, especially mine, because I was bored out of my mind. So,
well, it kept my sanity. I can tell you that.
Definitely. And you know what? Since we're still sticking with the topic of basketball, and we talked about your playing days, and how far did you go? I guess you would say for playing basketball.
Well, when I graduated high school, I had to make a choice. So high school, you can do multiple things. It's considerably harder to do that at the collegiate level. I mean, there's certainly some players who have been, two-way athletes at college, but it's rare. It's very rare. So I had to make a choice. And, I love football. Football is probably maybe my better sport, but I didn't like the cold. In Western Pennsylvania, by the end of football season, you're playing in the snow a lot of times. It's really cold. And it's practicing, 5-6 days a week and playing one game. That's not always that much fun. So I decided when I go to college, I'm going to play basketball because it's always indoors. We still have cold weather, but it's indoors. And of course, the fool that I was, I didn't realize, well, Lance, you could go south to college because, it's football season is warm in southern states. We go south. I didn't think of that. I was just naive back then. So I played basketball in college, had a wonderful experience. I was a JUCO athlete, had a chance to play, for one of the greatest coaches ever, Hall of Fame coach at Garrett College in tiny McHenry, Maryland, Dennis Gibson at Garrett College. And I just was so blessed to be a part of that program and to learn from him. And it really impacted my life, the time I got to spend around Coach Gibson. And then I played, I went in and played the 4-year level at, now it's Upstate University in South Carolina. And then when my playing days came to an end, I, like a lot of athletes, transitioned into coaching basketball.
Okay. And let me ask you about your basketball career. You say you went to, D2 and of course, JUCO, you went to both sides. So you've seen both sides of it. What was more exciting for you? I've talked to a lot of players, and some players said they love JUCO ball more than, D1 ball. So what was your opinion?
I think, there's a lot of challenges with JUCO ball. And JUCO, you see everything. I mean, there's players with baggage and things that you don't have at higher levels. Players, a lot of them are, if you watch the series on Netflix, you understand there's a lot of challenges in Netflix. Some of those players got families to support, so they got to work jobs, plus be students, plus play. So you see it all in JUCO. I mean, in basketball in JUCO, you can have a 25-point lead, and that means nothing. I mean, the decision-making sometimes, because, they're not only, they're players, they're novice players. They're equivalent to freshmen and sophomores. So, sometimes, people just starting out at the college level, they make a lot of mistakes, and their decision-making is evident at that level because it's hard to hold on to a lead. And, just the budgetary stuff with travel and, meal money and per diems, things like that. It's a different level at the JUCO. So you get a real appreciation for it. Now, having said all that, you make no mistake. There's some talent. I mean, some of the best basketball in the world is played on the JUCO level. And I got forced out. We were in, the DMV, the District of Columbia, Northern Virginia, Maryland area. I don't know why I keep going back to this, all the documentaries I've seen on HBO and Netflix, but there's I think it's called Basketball County. It's all about Prince George's County, Maryland, and all the great basketball players that came out of there, Kevin Durant and a lot of Michael Beasley and those names in the video. Well, when I was in JUCO, that was our league that I played at. And I got playing against, Stevie Franchise. Stevie Franchise was one of our competitors, our main rival at Allegheny College. So there was some real talent there. I have a tremendous appreciation for the JUCO level. And when you get to the 4-year level, there's coaches, not necessarily they're better coaches, but they have a different time frame. High school coaches, they may have to teach driver's ed or teach a class. They got lesson plans to do, all kinds of things. When you get to college, the higher up you go, the less ancillary responsibilities those coaches have, so they can concentrate just on basketball. When you get to like professional levelers, well, those guys, that's all they do is think about the sport. They don't have to worry about recruiting or any of that. They just concentrate in the skill level. When you have people who have that kind of time, that ability, they can devote so much time to it that they can really improve you as an athlete. And there's a far less tolerance for mistakes the higher up you go because of that.
No, definitely. Now, things that you do in the JUCO, you definitely can't do it at D1. Well, at least anything negative wise, you definitely can't do that at D1. They'll send you right back down. So, but
it gets more competitive.
Yeah, it's definitely more competitive. Like you said, there's a lot of players from JUCO that's just trying to get up to the same level as those guys. So I mean, spots are limited, but spots can be given up at any time, so taken away. So, but nevertheless, talking about JUCOs, man. Now, speaking of Netflix and Last Chance U, I recently interviewed Coach Bean from Last Chance U.
Okay,
and he talked about how tough it is for those guys because especially there in California, they don't. Guys don't have meal plans, don't even have dorms or that. So nature, but it's just for the love of the game. So I definitely think that, watching those JUCO stories and seeing those guys being able to, elevate and go to another level is pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree with you there. So I love that show, by the way.
Last Chance.
Yeah.
But I watched every season, man. It just keeps getting better and better for me. Now they gotten into basketball now. So who knows? Maybe we might see some more JUCO teams,
So if a producer of Last Chance U is watching this or catches this podcast, or somebody knows a producer, you're making a big mistake. You got to go see Dennis Gibson at Garrett College in Maryland. That's the show that gives you, you want a best hit. There it is.
Hey, there you go. So, hey, Netflix, if you're listening, hey, please. Hey, so, let's talk about your coaching now. So, you've had a, very extensive time coaching. You coached D2, you coached JUCO, man. How was that experience for you? And how long did you coach for?
Well, right out of college, I got a job as a head varsity high school coach. And you don't know it at the time, but you look back now and I was too young for that. I wasn't ready for it, but I loved it. And I think it worked for me. And I was able to use it as a springboard to advance my career because I had great people around me. The principal and the superintendent at that high school were so good to me, and they really mentored me, and I learned from them. So I'm like eternally grateful for them and everybody else who helped me. And then I got hired at the collegiate level. First started at the NAIA, and it was a very young age. And our school immediately transferred over into NCAA. We were one of the schools that made that transition. So I became, I think at the time I was like the second youngest head coach in the NCAA. And again, I was probably too inexperienced to take on that job, but it was just, it was way the, things just played out. The cards played out that way. And I had a wonderful experience there. And I loved it. And I loved all the relationships I built with, the players, and not just the players, but the professors and, the maintenance guys on staff. And you've got all these like friendships that are, and makes the experience so worthwhile. So that was it. And then, a really unexpected event changed the trajectory of my life and what I thought my career, would play out to be. And that's kind of how I ended up where I am now and what I do now.
Man, no, you feel free to elaborate, more on that. Feel free to talk about, that more that changed your life from going in from coaching into,
Okay.
Feel free to
So,
elaborate.
All right, I'm going to give you the condensed version because we told the whole thing. We did Tyrese. That'll be our entire our podcast. So I'll give you the condensed version. So I was coaching, and I had this player. We nominated for an award, and he ended up winning it. It was the All-State Good Works Award, and it's for student athletes to do good things in their community. They use their position as a student athlete to go out and make a difference in the community, which you would hope every student athlete would do. But this young man was especially good at that, and very deserving, very worthy of the award. So, the NCAA and Allstate Insurance flies us out. They present the award in the middle of Dallas Cowboys Stadium at the Final Four, and it's this wonderful event. And I'm so grateful and just a complete admiration of this player, and so proud of him, as any coach would be, because he wasn't the best player on our team, but he was special, and that's what made the recognition so special, special to special. But it really was. He was special, and that made the award special. So on a flight home from Dallas back to Pennsylvania, I had one of those weird plane rides where just got a lot of turbulence. I mean, we really hit a spot where just bouncing around, and it made me think about my life. And it scared me. And probably for the first time in my life, my adult life, I really thought, what if this is it? I mean, what if this plane goes down? And I had 2 daughters, and I started thinking about them. I thought, well, all right, if it does go down, what would be that one last bit of advice I would want to leave with my daughters? So one thing could I tell them that's going to set them up for a life of happiness and success? I mean, you tell me you love them. All right, that's nice. But knowing that your daddy loved you, is that really going to get you through those moments when you need a father's advice? Is it really going to set you up? Probably not. It's nice to know, but it's probably not going to be the advice. I kept thinking about it. I couldn't let go of this thought. I just kept I was obsessed with it. I kept playing it over and over in my mind. I started thinking about that player who won the award. And, he wasn't the best player in our team. He wasn't very tall, wasn't very fast, couldn't jump very high, didn't score that many points. And as I'm telling this story now, I'm almost feeling guilty because I really didn't even play him that much. But everybody on the team adored him. They loved being around him, because he loved being around the team. And it was always team first with this player. And, he was so loved because he was a good teammate. And I thought about it. I thought, well, there it is. That's the advice I want to give my daughters. I need to give my daughters. Because you think about it, Tyrese, it's, it checks so many different boxes. If you're going to have hard times in your life, you need a support network. Check. People want to be around good teammates. They're always going to go out of their way to help people who are willing to help them. If you're a good teammate, you're always going to have financial security in your life. Companies cannot wait to hire people who will put the needs of the company ahead of any, selfish agendas. So they're always going to have a job. Check 2. And then the best of all, when you're a good teammate, you serve the needs of your team. And service leads to purpose. Purpose leads to happiness. You wake up every morning with something to accomplish, something to look forward to, and you go to bed every night, something to be proud of. Well, what more could any father want for his daughters than happiness? So that was the conclusion I came to. And now, how do you convey those thoughts to a kindergartner and to a preschooler, which is how old my daughters were back then? Well, you draw pictures. And that's what I did. I came home that night after a flight, and I sat down at my little office computer, and I drew out these very rudimentary sketches. And I wrote down some sentences that I thought would help them explain what a good teammate is. And I said, good teammates care, good teammates share, and good teammates listen. And I elaborated on that concept. And I printed those things off my computer. I'm not much of an artist, but I drew these silly little pictures, and I printed them off in our little inkjet printer, which is what we had back then. I folded those pages in half, and I went and I sat them on the kitchen counter that night. I went to bed. Well, next morning, my wife wake up, she sees it and shows it to some of her, her dance mom friends and their friends, and showed it to their friends. And that book became a published children's book called Be a Good Teammate. And I don't know, it's somewhere, it's behind me here. Over here. So that silly little book has now made its way around the world. And what it really did is set in motion a sequence of events that got me thinking, this is what we ought to be doing with youth sports. I mean, there's so much value comes out of sports participation. The positive things. Kids learn work ethic. They learn dependability. They learn to rely on their team, all these things. But the most important lesson of all should be to be a good teammate, because that's the one skill that's going to ensure them happiness in life. That's the one thing that they're going to need to have success in their adult life. So, I started talking to groups about that, and eventually, I became obsessed with that topic, and now that's all I do. I left my job as coaching, and I travel around. I spread the good teammate message, and I help organizations develop better teammates.
Man, that sounds awesome, man. That was a great answer. I didn't expect that crazy story, but that's insane, man. It's great. It's crazy. I want to say this, put this out there now, man. I don't care what anybody says. Playing turbulence will have anybody, thinking like that, man. Playing turbulence is scary. Scary.
It is.
I couldn't do it. I can't do it planes, but nevertheless, that story about being a good teammate, that is true. That does ring bells because especially me graduating. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. I think that it's something that coaches talk about. They'll tell players, hey, man, you need to be a better teammate. Even parents tell their kids sometimes, you need a better teammate, but they don't really explain what that means. And as a society, I don't know that we have really defined what that means. And that's really what set me off on my journey of discovery. What's it really mean to be a good teammate?
And I think, what you said, the characteristics that you said is, are perfect, to be a great teammate. You gotta be a great listener. You gotta be one to, help people out. To be a great teammate is just being a great person in general, and you'll go very far in life, if you be a good teammate, just, wherever you go, either if it's a job, if it's at sports, if it's, being an athlete, anything. So,
I mean, do you consider yourself a good teammate when you think of your life, Tyrese?
Well, I would definitely consider myself a good teammate. I've helped a lot of people out, especially my friends. They've had times where they needed something, or, they needed a ride somewhere. If they needed something, I would help them out. Vice versa, they would do the same for me, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to get to the same place.
Yeah, I suspect, I think think of the mantra of your podcast, aspire to inspire. I mean, that's like good teammate 101. That's the mindset of a good teammate. You want to inspire others. So I suspect you probably are a good teammate. So the bigger question for you is, have you ever asked yourself that specific question? How much thought have you put into your answer? And can you quantify it? It's hard to do, isn't it? Because we don't. Who thinks that way? Most people don't.
No, it's definitely not one of the first thoughts, the first things you think about, but it's definitely a great question.
But it should be, right?
Right, because it definitely should be a one-on-one question. That should be a question that, you should always ask, but it's something that you pass over. It's something that is never asked, but it definitely should be. So that you did. I've never thought to myself or never asked myself if I'm a good teammate until now. So I definitely agree with that statement. But,
So it's like, I'm not asking a question to call you out. You're like the perfect example, because I know I wouldn't have. When I was a player, I didn't really think. I thought, yeah, I'm a good teammate. And here's one of the things I like to do. I'll go into an audience, if I'm at a conference or whatever, and I'm talking to a group, and bring me in to talk to a group. And I'll start off saying, all right, here we go. $1 million question. Show of hands. How many of you in here consider yourself to be a good teammate? Everybody's hand goes up. Who's not going to think they're a good teammate? And that's not the issue. The issue is, we haven't really put anything out there that quantifies that. So then I'll ask the audience, all right, give me a word that you use to describe a good teammate. And I'll start writing those words up and it'll go up on the screen. And you'll hear things like, hardworking, trustworthy, dependable, likable, easy to get along with, give their shirt off their back, all these things. And then you put them all up on the board, and pretty soon you got 50 different words. And you're like, all right, how do you convey all of that? Boil it down into one thing so that every member of your team is on the same page. Because there's one person on the team thinks that being on time is crucial to being a good teammate. But there's somebody else on that team who doesn't value that skill and thinks the most important thing is, you got to be trustworthy. So how do you get those people on the same page? So that was what I wanted to set out to do. So I started going around and thinking about who are the good teammates. So I started interviewing people, and it started off with professional athletes, and I started looking at there's this award they give out every year in the NBA called the Twyman-Stokes Award. It's named after Jack Twyman and Maurice Stokes, who were these basketball players back in the late 1950s. And so it's an amazing story that I think everybody, I don't know why Disney hasn't made a movie out of this. They made a movie about it, and I think back in the late 70s, but it's time for that story to be retold again. So Disney, if you're out there, this is a Disney Plus opportunity for you. So the story basically, Maurice Stokes was this player way ahead of his time. He was the LeBron James of his era. He was big, tall, but he had guard skills. And he was a rookie of the year in the NBA. He had the NBA record for rebounds and assists in the same season, and just all these phenomenal stats. Last game of the year against the Lakers, he gets undercut and falls down, hits his head, and he ends up being paralyzed over this. Now, back then, there's no insurance, no protection from the Players Association, nothing like that. So he's out on his own. He's got no money, nobody take care of him. His teammate, the shooting guard in that team, is a guy named Jack Twyman. And Jack Twyman basically adopts Maurice Stokes. He becomes his legal guardian. He assumes all of his medical bills, all his care and everything. And he does all these fundraisers with other players in the league. And they basically take care and they set Maurice up for the rest of his life. And, to me, that is the epitome of a great teammate. So the NBA named this award after Twyman and Stokes. And this year, I think the guy from the Trailblazers, Damian Lillard, was the recipient. And I bet you didn't know that.
No, I did not know that. Actually, I've never heard of the award. So,
and that doesn't surprise me because it makes me so angry that, and you're a smart guy and you're in media and stuff, that the NBA and the national media in general, I don't think they do a good enough job promoting that award. Because that should be like the biggest award they announce every year. Because that's something that inspires every youth basketball player, every youth athlete. I think they ought to make a bigger deal out of that award. But anyhow, make a long story, going back to where I was talking. So I started looking at that award and past recipients of it. And I came across an article in Sports Illustrated that said Kendrick Perkins, the NBA's best teammate. So I was able to interview. I talked to Kendrick about it, about what he thinks being a good teammate is. And I started getting his thoughts. And I started going to coaches who were coaches of the years. And it got to the point I was going to, teachers of the year for various school districts around the country. And then I'd walk into Chick-fil-A, and they have that sign, every Chick-fil-A has it, their employee of the month. So I started looking at those, and I'd interview those people. And eventually I determined there is one common definition, one common way to explain the art of being a good teammate. It's something I call the we gear. Now, Tyrese, can you drive a stick shift like a standard transmission? No, most people can't.
Yeah, I can.
Well, if you can, then you're ahead of the curve because most people don't. So, it's like shifting gears and driving a car that you can shift gears. It's like a lost art. So it seems almost strange to explain the art of being a good teammate through what's practically a lost art, shifting gears. But I think that's the perfect analogy for what it means to be a good teammate. See, we as humans, we live our lives in gears. We have the me gear and the we gear. The me gear is all about me. What's in it for me? How does this benefit me? Every decision you make is predicated on me. Now, there's a word to describe that. Selfish, right? Now, as humans, in a car, before you shift gears, you got to press down that clutch pedal. What's known as a clutch moment. And as humans, we have clutch moments in our lives. There's those junctures where we got to make a quick decision about which way we're going to go, how we're going to proceed, what decision we're going to make. Here's a difference, or here's what it means to be a good teammate. When good teammates come to clutch moments, they shift from me to we. They make their decision based on one simple question. Instead of what's best for me, they choose what's best for my team. And sometimes that requires sacrifice. Sometimes that requires humility. And a lot of times that requires people stepping outside their comfort zone. But when you use that premise, shift into the we gear, choose based on what's best for your team. That's what it means to be a good teammate.
That's a solid answer. That's the most simplest way to put it, in my opinion. I think being sacrifice. I think was the biggest word that comes to mind. To be honest, when you talk about being a teammate, because there's a lot of things that I think. One video that comes to mind is there was a video of LeBron talking to I believe his son's AAU team. This was like a couple of years ago, and he was talking about how everybody, how everybody's in the league can't play or this and that and the third, all because they're on the bench. It's not because they're sorry. They got to play a role. So with that being said, I think that comes just full circle back around to what you're saying pretty much. So I definitely like that initiative. That's a pretty clean initiative. Instead of thinking about yourself, you actually think about everybody else in general. So
it's crazy because that simple premise changes cultures. And I happen to be of the belief that almost every problem that we have in our society comes down to people not being good teammates. So think about like domestic problems in homes, like broken homes. Think about the opioid and the drug epidemic. You think about the racial division and all the shenanigans that go on Wall Street and in politics. All those problems come down to people not being good teammates, to people not being in the we gear. So that's why I think it is so important for coaches to demand that some component of their coaching strategy includes the element of making their players be good teammates. And that's an educational process. And if I'm a school superintendent or a high school principal, AD, some component, or if I'm the booster club president of my school, I'm saying, Coach, you're not getting 1 cent till you show me some type of lesson plan where you are specifically and intentionally working in an element into your strategy, where you're teaching your kids how to be good teammates. Because at the end of the day, so few of those kids are going to go on to play or make a living out of sports, but they're all going to need that skill of being a good teammate. And I think that's how you change society. That's how you improve society. So that's my mission now, Tyrese. That's what I do.
Man, I support the mission, and I'll support you, and I'll keep supporting the teammate factor. With that being said, I know you're a mentor speaker. I know motivational speaker. I know you're a public speaker. You're out in many places. I know with COVID, I know you can't really move around as much as you want to and go and talk to people as much as you want to. But with that being said, is there any events that you have coming up? Are you doing anything virtual wise? Is there any way anybody could hear you speak right now if they wanted to?
Okay, well, you can go to our YouTube page. There's some clips on my YouTube page. You just Google my name. And those same links are on my website, coachloya.com. I should tell you, yes, I was a coach, but on my website and all the stuff, like Coach Loya, it's almost pretentious. Who calls themselves Coach Loya? But there's a reason, there's a story behind that. And even though I don't coach anymore, why I still use that moniker, Coach. When I wrote that children's book, Be a Good Teammate, on the front of it, I wrote by Coach Lance Loya. Now, my kids liked Dr. Seuss, and I read that Dr. Seuss wasn't a real doctor, but he kept it on there. Kids liked it. Well, I thought, I am a real coach. But I remember, people would always come and tell me, like we ran summer camps, and parents would come up, can you tell my daughter, can you tell my son this? Because they won't listen to me, but they'll listen to you as a coach. So that's why when I wrote that book, I put Coach Lance Loya. So they might not listen to their parents, but the coach tells them that they might listen to it. So it was a joke. It was like a tribute, a tip of the hat to Dr. Seuss. Well, now I can't get rid of that. It follows me everywhere, the Coach Lance Loya. So that's why the website and all that is Coach Loya. But yes, if you go to a website, all that information's on there. And all the books, you can get those on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, all the normal outlets. You can also get them through the book. Now, teams often do a book club read. They want everybody reading the book. It's very popular. It's like a trendy thing to do right now. So if you're your team and you want to do the we gear, and a lot of teams have done that as your book read, you can reach out to us on our website, and we give you a bulk rate price and get you a better price for bulk shipments.
Awesome. Speaking about your books, like you said, you've written almost 8 books. Like you say, you have your first book was a children's book. Talk about your books for a second. Let me know if you're working on any right now.
Okay. So the very first book was a children's book. It's a picture book, and it's for kids. It's great. It's like great for kids who are just learning to read. So I wrote it. In kindergarten kids, first grade kids, they have these sight words, and they're very simple words. You don't have to sound out. They recognize the, and they recognize simple words like that. I used as many of those sight words as I can because I always envisioned my daughters reading this to me. Way before it was a book, I thought they could read this to me. So it's good for kids. It's a good bedtime story. It's a good lesson. You plant that seed. Schools, I have a lot of schools, who have ordered bulks of this. Their PTOs order that book and they give it out to their students. I have some schools who have designed their entire bullying program around that concept of be a good teammate. And that makes my heart smile so much. But that was the only real children's book I wrote. The rest of them were all adult nonfiction. So, I wrote kind of about the story about the plane ride, and my first book was called Building Good Teammates. And that's what that one's about, and the journey and discovering what it means to be a good teammate. And then, the we gear we talked about, and it goes over the 5 key behaviors of all good teammates. And I often say, you don't have to be fast to be a good teammate. You don't have to be tall. You don't have to be strong. You don't have to be intelligent. You don't even have to be good looking. You just have to be alive, ALIVE. And that's an acronym that stands for active, loyal, invested, viral, and empathetic. Those are the 5 key behaviors of good teammates. So that book is written, and specifically for teams to read together and cover those 5 behaviors. Then the other books come from, no, I take it back. I have one more book. It's called Outside the Box Within the Cube, and it's a quote book. So, if you're a coach, this is the book you want hanging out in your office when your players or parents or recruits are stopping by. This is the book you want because it's a culture, statement on your culture. And it's got 1,001 quotes about the art of being a good teammate. And anything about that, if you want to be authority on something, you got to think about it enough that you have 1,000 quotes about it. And that's what that book is. Now, the other 4 books come from the Teammate Tuesdays series. And how that evolved, Tyrese, someone suggested, you ought to write a blog. All these discoveries, what came out of the Kendrick Perkins interview, or what came out of that Twyman Stokes research. And every time I had a new idea or a new thought on being a good teammate, I would write it down. And, there's short little 2-3 page chapters, and there's one chapter for every week. And I write these on my website. It's my blog. So there's thousands of people across the world subscribe to my blog. And then at the end of the year, someone first approached me at the end of my first year about, I want to give these to my grandfather as a gift but he doesn't do blogs online. Is there any way we can get this in like a book form? So I approached the idea, and the books got published. So my blog is now a book every year that comes out. So there's 4 different versions of that book, volumes of that book. So those are great. I mean, they're great. They're like, think of it as a good pregame speech. A good coach would motivate a player in just a short little 2-3 minute. That's what those books are. Man, so new books coming out. I'm always working on the blog. That continues. I have a couple projects I've been working on. One of them I think is called Good Teammate Moves. And, I like to think that the actions a teammate takes, those selfless actions to move the team forward, I call them good teammate moves. And think about it, makes sense, right? Basketball players, they got moves. They cross over, spin, go between the legs. More moves you have, better basketball player you are, at least in theory. Dancers, they got moves. I don't know, they plie, they lean and dab. The more dance moves you have, better dancer you are. Same thing for good teammates. There's more of those kind, generous, selfless acts you do for your team, the better teammates you are. So so that book is going to be a collection of stories about things that teammates have done, sacrifices they've made to help their team.
Man, it definitely sounds like a lot of great books to check out. And I definitely want to check out that book that you're currently writing on now. And like I said, I know you have a website. I know people might want to check out more of it. So feel free to talk about it. I usually give my guests a time to talk about their future endeavors. And I know you just talked about your book, but I want to give you this time to pretty much have the floor and talk about where you can follow, where people can follow you at, where they can stay in contact with you and all that. So go ahead, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, I don't want this to turn into an infomercial, Tyree. So I'll give it real quick. You can find me. Google my name, Lance Loya. All of my social media. You can hook up with us on Twitter. We tweet out. Being a good teammate's like anything else. If you aspire to inspire, you got to recharge the batteries. You can't run on an empty tank. You got to recharge that. So every day in my social media accounts on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, we send out we post these short little, 1-sentence thoughts on what it means to be a good teammate. And it's something that you think about, it causes you to think about kind of teammates you are. And it's something you can share, because good teammates share. You share with people on your team to get them thinking about what it means to be a good teammate. So you can connect us all this normal social media. We do have something going on right now. I have something called the Good Teammate Factory. And it's a project that I really believe in. And so if you're a high school coach or high school athletic director, you're off in the summer, it's your off season now, and you're coming up for fall sports, they're getting ready for their fall training camps. You're going to go out and you're going to do your two-a-days and all those fun things. And you're going to need some activity to do between practices. You can't practice for 5 hours and take a lunch break and practice for another. You just can't. First of all, most athletic associations don't allow that. But you got your team together and you want to do some kind of bonding experience. So we've developed this online course. It's about a 2.5 hour. It's about the length of a practice. And you sit down together in a room, like a classroom or an auditorium with your team. And it's a video course. And I walk you through those 5 alive behaviors. And it's got interactive activity.
Coach, you still there? Looks like I'll be. Well, I was here. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for checking out my podcast. So feel free to hit the link down below in the description. And also feel free to follow Coach Lance down below. Also at the ticker down below. So thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in. And we'll see you next week. I also have the VP of Sports Illustrated coming. So hopefully you guys tuning in. So stay safe. Stay inspired.